Morning always begins in silence. Light slips through the window. The first breath of the day is still whole, unhurried. It is a rare moment when the mind has not yet been pulled toward tasks to be done, things left unfinished, or worries that have not yet found their names. But very quickly, many people allow old fears and doubts to step forward. In Buddhism, morning is seen as freshly turned soil. Whatever seeds are planted at this moment will quietly grow throughout the day. The words you speak to yourself each morning do not only guide today, they slowly nourish your inner life, moment by moment. In Buddhism, the Buddha never taught people to force themselves into becoming a different version of who they are. He simply reminded us to return and look directly at our own mind in this very moment. Lasting transformation always begins from within, not from pressure or blind effort. You are about to hear 3 sentences meant for each morning. They are not slogans for self-comfort, nor are they words meant to hypnotize the mind. They are 3 inner supports that help the mind stand steady as a new day begins. When spoken with awareness, these 3 sentences do not only make the day feel lighter, they gradually change the way you live. Affirmation 1. I am not my past. Today, I begin again. For many people, the morning begins in silence but not in lightness. As soon as the eyes open, the body is awake, yet the mind remains stuck. Old mistakes return. Wrong decisions from the past replay like a familiar film. Some things happened long ago, yet each morning they are brought back again. A careless word, a missed opportunity, a choice that still causes regret. And before the new day truly begins, we have already judged ourselves in silence. No one speaks it aloud, but within the mind there is a verdict that is quiet and deep. In this way, people carry all of yesterday into today, carrying the weight of memory and calling it who they are. According to the teachings of the Buddha, the root of suffering does not lie in what happened, but in attachment. When we cling to a fixed image of who we are, we trap ourselves in the past. Attachment to self makes us believe that what we once did is who we will always be. Attachment to the past causes us to relive what is already past, even while the body is standing in the present. The Buddha reminded us that the past is already gone. One who continues to live in the past is not yet truly awake. Awakening does not mean erasing everything that happened. It means clearly seeing what is memory, what is the present, and what is actually unfolding in this very moment. In Buddhism, all things are impermanent. Nothing remains still, not even a human being. The body today is different from yesterday. The mind today is no longer the same as it was years ago. When we understand impermanence, we begin to see that we are not a fixed entity. We are a flowing process, continuously unfolding. Like a river, water passes through many stretches, meets many rocks, and turns many corners. But the river is never the rocks it has passed over. Obstacles are only part of the journey, not the essence of the water. Human beings are the same. Mistakes, stumbles, and wounds that once occurred are only points along the path, not the totality of who we are. When morning comes, if we keep looking at ourselves through the eyes of the past, we will never truly see ourselves in the present. We look at an old version of ourselves and continue to treat ourselves with doubt, caution, or blame. But when we allow ourselves to pause, take a slow breath, and look directly at this moment, another possibility appears. The possibility of renewal. The possibility of beginning again, not by erasing memory, but by releasing the sentence we have placed upon ourselves. The past can be a teacher, but it does not have to be a prison. The lesson can remain. The punishment can be laid down. Beginning again in the spirit of Buddhism does not mean denying what has happened. It means full acceptance without identifying ourselves with our mistakes. When we say that we are not our past, We are separating ourselves from the old story. We allow ourselves to grow without the need to explain. True growth does not require justification. It happens quietly when we live differently, when we know when to stop, when we no longer repeat what has hurt us before. You do not need to explain your growth to anyone, not even to the version of yourself that lived in the past. Each morning, life offers us a very small, yet very real opportunity. The opportunity to live as someone who is present, not pulled backward, not pushed forward, simply present. When we accept that we are not our past, we create a space within the mind. And within that space, lightness begins to appear. Not because everything is resolved, but because we are no longer straining to carry what is already past. The morning practice is simple. When you wake up, take a moment to stand in front of the mirror. No judgment, no commentary, just look and breathe. Breathe slowly and deeply so that body and mind can meet again. Then say quietly, just loud enough to be heard inside, "Today I'm allowed to begin again." Not to become someone else, but to return to yourself in this very moment. When this sentence is repeated each morning with awareness, it does not only change that day, it gradually softens the way you see yourself. And from there, the way you live also begins to change. Affirmation 2, everything I need is already inside me. After allowing ourselves to release the past and begin again, many people still carry another feeling as they step into a new day. It is the feeling of lack, a lack of confidence, a lack of time, a lack of opportunity, a lack of the conditions needed to live as we wish. Modern mornings rarely begin with stillness. They begin with comparison. As soon as we open our eyes and touch the screen, we see other people's lives moving faster, more successful, more complete. Those images say nothing out loud, yet they quietly plant a familiar message in the mind that we are not enough. And once the feeling of not enough appears, the rest of the day easily becomes a cycle of chasing, searching, and tension. According to the teachings of the Buddha, suffering does not arise only from loss, but also from a sense of lack that is continually nourished within the mind. When we believe that we are lacking, we live in a state of unease. And when we live in unease, every action carries urgency. The Buddha reminded us that we must be an island unto ourselves. This does not mean denying the outer world or material life. Human beings still need food, work, and connection. But this teaching reminds us not to let the mind depend entirely on what lies outside. When all our value is placed on what we do not yet have, the mind never truly rests. In Buddhism, fullness does not mean having more. It means no longer being pulled by the feeling of lack. One person may possess very little and yet remain peaceful. Another may have much and still feel restless. The difference does not lie in circumstances, but in where the mind is standing. When we begin the day with the belief that we are lacking, we see everything through the lens of lack. But when we remember that what is most essential for peace is already present within us, the way we see the world begins to change. There is a gentle truth that many people forget. What we are searching for outside may very well be the part within us that we have neglected. We seek recognition because we have forgotten how to recognize ourselves. We seek safety because we have forgotten to return to the breath. We seek value because we have forgotten that life is unfolding right here within body and mind. When we understand this, we no longer need to strive to become someone else. We only need to remember who we were before the noise became too loud. This teaching does not call for loud encouragement or forceful motivation. Buddhism does not teach people to pretend to be strong so that one day they might become strong. There is no need to believe that you are perfect. No need to convince yourself that everything is fine. What is more essential is to return. Return to the breathing body. Return to the feeling of presence. Pause for a moment in the stream of thought and clearly see what is already here. When we look long enough, we begin to realize that we are not as empty as we once believed. Fullness in Buddhism is very simple. Enough to breathe, enough to feel, enough to recognize that we are alive and capable of awareness. When the mind touches this kind of enough, it becomes more grounded. We no longer need to chase every invitation the world offers. Not because we turn away from life, but because life no longer pulls us too far away from ourselves. From this state of enough, action becomes clearer. We work not to fill a void, but to express what is already present within. The morning practice is simple, but requires honesty. Before picking up the phone, place your hand over your heart. Feel the rhythm. Feel the warmth. Take a quiet moment to ask within what in me remains whole right now. It may be the breath. It may be the capacity to be aware. It may simply be the presence of life itself. There is no need for a grand answer, just a small anchor, so the mind is no longer swept away by the feeling of lack. When this question is repeated each morning, we gradually learn how to begin the day from a place of enough rather than from a sense of deficiency. And from there, the entire day becomes lighter and more balanced. Affirmation 3. Today, I move with purpose, not permission. After beginning the morning by releasing the past and remembering that we are not empty, there is still a very subtle barrier that prevents many people from moving forward. The barrier is procrastination. Not the obvious kind of laziness, but a quiet waiting disguised as reasonable excuses. Waiting until we feel more confident. Waiting until someone else acknowledges us. Waiting until everything feels clearer before we begin. But life does not move according to the waiting rhythm of the mind. A new day still passes. Time continues to move. And if we only stand there waiting to feel ready, an entire life can pass in hesitation. According to the teachings of the Buddha, the path of liberation is not found in avoidance or passivity. Buddhism does not encourage people to remain still and call it acceptance. On the contrary, the Buddha emphasized right effort. This is effort that is balanced and skillful, not effort driven by tension, and not surrender through indifference. Right effort is steady movement, not rushing ahead of the mind, but also not allowing the mind to fall asleep in fear. It is movement guided by awareness, not by pressure or the desire to be approved. Many people misunderstand mindful living as slowing down to the point of no action. But in Buddhism, awareness always walks together with action. An action born from clear seeing does not need to be loud. It does not need to prove anything. When we know what we are doing and why we are doing it, we no longer need permission from the outside. The only permission required is inner agreement. When the mind is no longer divided, action naturally arises. In modern life, many people hand the authority of their lives to the gaze of others. A compliment pushes us forward. A doubtful look causes us to retreat. We slowly become accustomed to asking the world before asking ourselves. But the world is always changing. What is approved today may be questioned tomorrow. If we continue to wait for the world to nod, we will remain standing at the edge of our own lives. There is a truth that needs to be remembered. Do not wait for the world to give you a place to stand. Stand firmly where you already are. When you stand firmly, your place naturally forms. Living with purpose in the spirit of Buddhism does not mean chasing grand ambition. Purpose here is very simple. It is living in alignment with what you clearly see as right. Speaking the words that need to be spoken with clarity. Doing the work that needs to be done with a mind that is not shaken. When purpose is rooted in awareness, we do not need to ask fear for permission. Fear may still be present, but it is no longer the one holding the wheel. We walk with fear rather than being pulled back by it. Morning is a crucial time to establish this inner stance. If from the very beginning of the day, we decide not to wait for a perfect feeling, we have already traveled half the path. There is no need to know everything, no need for absolute certainty. We only need to know what the next step is and take it with full presence. Buddhism calls this mindful action. Each step placed is known as it is placed. No added stories, no judgment. The morning practice is very concrete. Choose one thing you have been postponing for some time. Not something big, just something small and real. When the day begins, give 10 minutes to that one thing. Do not aim to finish it. Do not demand a perfect result. Simply begin. When 10 minutes pass, you may stop. But something important has already happened. You have moved. Each time you move in this way, inner trust is nourished. Not the belief that you will succeed, but the trust that you can act without waiting for permission from anyone. When the morning begins with a mindful step, the rest of the day carries a different rhythm, not rushed, yet not stagnant. You no longer need to prove your worth. You simply live in alignment with what you clearly see. And that is how a day is lived with purpose, not through force, but through steady presence in each small action. When the 3 morning reminders have been placed as inner supports, there is something important to look back on in order to understand the deeper value of this practice. These reminders are not something new that has just appeared in modern life. They are not a short-lived trend or a momentary motivational method. In the Buddhist tradition, returning to the mind in the morning has been preserved and practiced for thousands of years as a steady path of awakening. In the lives of practitioners, morning has always been regarded as a special time. The body has just finished resting, and the mind has not yet been pulled by work, responsibility, or layered emotions. After a long night, the mind is like a lake that has just settled. If one knows how to return at the right moment, the practitioner can see the very subtle movements within more clearly. That is why in meditation traditions, morning is often the time devoted to meditation, contemplation, and mindfulness. Not by chance, but because it is when the mind is most receptive. In Buddhism, awakening is not something lofty or separate from daily life. Awakening begins in very ordinary moments. A breath that is known, a step that is placed with awareness, a morning that is lived fully in presence. Practitioners understand that if the morning begins in awareness, the entire day will carry the imprint of that awareness. Not because everything goes smoothly, but because the mind has a stable place from which to meet whatever arises. In meditation traditions, practitioners often begin the day by returning to the body and mind before stepping into the world. Not to withdraw from life, but to enter life with clarity. When the mind has not yet been filled with thoughts, it becomes easier to notice old habits quietly operating beneath the surface, familiar reactive tendencies, unnamed desires. If these are not seen in the morning, it is very likely that the entire day will be led by them without our knowing. Buddhism emphasizes that practice is not about accumulating more knowledge or affirming an identity. Practice is the gradual removal of layers of ignorance that cover the mind, and morning is the most suitable time to begin this process each day. Upon waking, we have not yet been swept into social roles. We are not yet successful or failing, not yet right or wrong. We are simply a human being who is breathing. From this place of non-division, awareness can arise. Practitioners do not view morning as a continuation of yesterday. Each morning is a new life, a new opportunity to observe the mind, a new opportunity to let go of what is unnecessary. When we see morning in this way, We no longer step into the day with the heavy posture of the past. We step in with humility and openness, without excessive expectation, without locking ourselves inside old stories. This aligns deeply with the spirit of the three morning reminders that have been shared. They are not meant to create a new identity to cling to. They are simply gentle prompts that guide the mind back to the right place. When we say we are not our past, we are practicing impermanence. When we remember that we are already enough, we are releasing attachment to lack. When we choose to live with purpose without asking fear for permission, we are walking the path of right effort. All of these are core practices in Buddhism, expressed through the simple language of modern life. Morning, therefore, is not only the beginning of a workday, it is a doorway that opens to a new opportunity for awakening. If we step through that doorway in haste and forgetfulness, the day will quickly pass like any other. But if we step through with presence, even for just a few early minutes, we plant a different seed, a seed of awareness, a seed of lightness. Buddhism does not ask human beings to change their entire lives in one morning. The Buddha simply reminded us to return and clearly see what is present. Each morning is one practice of seeing clearly in this way. When the practice is repeated consistently, it is no longer a ritual. It becomes a way of living. A way of living that knows how to pause, how to listen, how to begin again from the simplest place, the mind itself. When morning is understood in the spirit, the three reminders are no longer empty words. They become a bridge connecting an ancient tradition of awakening with present-day life. A bridge that helps us avoid being swept away by the speed of the world, while still walking steadily within it. And it is within this steadiness that healing and balance begin to unfold naturally. What matters now is no longer understanding something new, but how these sentences are held and lived with each day. If they are heard once and then left aside, they will quickly fade like many other beautiful ideas. But when they are repeated slowly, with presence and discipline, these three sentences can become an inner operating system, not to control life, but to protect peace amid constant movement. In Buddhism, the path of practice is not built on explosive moments. It is formed through small, steady practices repeated each day. Morning, therefore, plays a crucial role. The way we begin the morning often determines how we move through the rest of the day. If the morning is rushed, the mind is easily pulled away. If the morning contains stillness, the mind has a place to stand. These three reminders are not meant to change the outer world. They help the mind find a point of support before stepping into the world. The first sentence reminds us that we are not our past. When repeated each morning, it slowly dissolves the habit of identifying ourselves with what has already happened. We no longer carry yesterday into today as a burden. We learn to place the past behind us, not through denial, but through understanding. The past remains as part of the journey, but it no longer holds the steering wheel. When the past is placed in its rightful position, the mind becomes lighter. And from that lightness, the present begins to be lived more fully. The second sentence reminds us that what is most essential is already within. When this sentence is repeated consistently, the mind gradually releases its habit of viewing life through the lens of lack. We no longer begin the day by searching for more, but by recognizing what is already present: the breath, life itself, the capacity to be aware. These things may seem small, yet they are the foundation of every experience. When the mind touches this sense of enough, it becomes steadier in the face of change. We are less easily swept away by comparison or pressure, not because life becomes perfect, but because the mind is no longer entirely dependent on what lies outside. The third sentence reminds us that today we move with purpose, not asking fear for permission. When repeated slowly, This sentence invites us to look again at how we act. Are we waiting too long to be acknowledged? Are we postponing because we are afraid of making mistakes? Buddhism does not teach people to be strong by suppressing fear. The Buddha taught us to look directly at fear with awareness. When we move forward even while fear remains, that is not recklessness. It is right effort. Each small step taken with presence steadily nourishes inner trust. When these three sentences are placed side by side, they form a clear structure. The past is behind. Strength is within, and the path lies directly beneath our feet. Each morning, when we repeat this structure, we are gently establishing inner order, not allowing the past to pull us back, not allowing lack to push us forward, not allowing fear to stand in our way. This order is not meant to control emotions, but to give emotions a place where they can be seen and passed through. Morning discipline in the spirit of Buddhism is not forceful. It is a gentle commitment to oneself, a commitment to set aside a few minutes at the start of the day to return, to breathe, to remember what needs remembering. When this discipline is maintained, it becomes a safe space for the mind. No matter how turbulent the day may be, the mind knows that each morning there is a place to return. This is what protects peace in a realistic way, without idealizing life. Many people believe that peace is the result of resolving every problem. But in Buddhism, peace does not come from everything being perfect. Peace comes from the mind no longer being pulled too far by what happens. These three morning reminders do not promise an easy day. They simply help us enter the day with a different posture, a posture that knows where we are, what we have, and how we are walking. When the morning begins in awareness, the choices throughout the day become clearer. We know when to stop, when to continue, when to let go, when to step forward, not because we are more intelligent, but because the mind is no longer covered by so many layers of fear and desire. This clarity is not loud. It appears quietly in very ordinary moments. These three reminders, when repeated each morning, are no longer just words. They become a way of seeing life, a way of seeing that prevents us from being swept away by the fast pace of living, a way of seeing that allows us to slow down even while moving. Buddhism calls this living in mindfulness, not only while sitting in meditation, but in every small action. Each morning, when you remind yourself that the past is behind you, you give yourself the chance to not be trapped. When you remind yourself that strength is within, you give yourself stability. When you remind yourself that the path lies beneath your feet, you give yourself the courage to walk. You do not need to know everything. You only need to know what the next step is. And it is within this simple repetition that a new inner operating system is formed, not to make you special, but to help you live in alignment with your own truth. A very simple truth. Each morning, you can begin again. Not by changing the world, but by placing your mind in the right position. When the mind is in the right place, life gradually finds its own order. When the three morning reminders have been placed as inner supports, what remains is not the effort to remember more, but allowing what you have just heard to settle. There is no need to understand everything right now. No need to feel stronger or more positive in any obvious way. It is enough to recognize that throughout this journey, the mind has had moments of slowing down, and that slowing down itself is already an important step. Buddhism does not encourage chasing emotional highs. The Buddha taught the middle way, not stretching yourself upward with hope, not pressing yourself downward with disappointment, simply returning and being present. For this reason, this ending is not a long prayer, nor is it a promise of dramatic change. It is only a very gentle mindfulness reminder for you to carry into the next morning. When tomorrow arrives, you do not need to remember everything you have heard. You do not need to live more perfectly than today. The only thing needed is to give yourself a very brief moment right after waking, before picking up the phone, before allowing the world to pull you away. Take one slow breath, feel the body being here, and if it feels helpful, repeat one of the three sentences. Not to force the mind to change, but to remind it to return to the right place. If there are times when you forget these reminders, that is completely normal. Buddhism does not see forgetting as failure. Forgetting simply means that remembering will happen again, and each moment of remembering is a moment of awakening. There is no need to blame yourself, no need for self-judgment. Just begin again from the moment that is present. Each morning offers you that opportunity. Life will continue to test your peace. There will be days when things do not unfold as you hoped. There will be moments when you feel tired, doubtful, or hesitant. But if the morning begins with an inner support, you will not be completely lost. No matter how far you wander, the mind still knows the way back. And it is this capacity to return that nourishes healing in a sustainable way. If you have listened this far, leave one simple line. Today, I begin again. Not for me, not for an algorithm, but for yourself tomorrow morning. So that when the new day begins, you have a gentle reminder that you can always begin again, right here, with your own breath and your own presence.